What's up everybody, 40 the Broadway Saiyan here, and welcome back again to my YouTube channel, bringing you guys another video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. In this video, we're going to be covering the debut of Emperor's LD weapon, which is coming out in conjunction with his lost chapters on Global Opera Omnia. But first, if you enjoy what you see on this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell. That way you guys are not missing out on any future videos that I upload, and if you find the content on this channel very helpful and useful, be sure to hit that like button as it does help me out, and share this video to your friends and family who may enjoy Opera Omnia. So we're going to be covering Emperor's LD weapon because it is the brand new piece of content that we're going to be getting in conjunction with his lost chapters. Now I got a lot of good feedback from you guys when I made my video for Kefka's Burst and LD weapon, and from the consensus, what I'm going to be doing moving forward is if a existing character in Opera Omnia gets something brand new, we're going to be just doing straight up gameplay, and I'm just going to be showing you guys the abilities as I play that character when I do that let's play, because I feel like it does provide a little bit more value rather than just having a bunch of text appear for something that you may already be familiar with that's already getting something, just a little bit new, a little bit of an upgrade. So that's how I'm going to be doing this particular video for Emperor. So we're going to be taking a look at that. I'm also going to be covering the banner that's featured on the lost chapters, as well as the other banners later on that Emperor's weapons will be repeating on, because I know you guys want to get that information too, so then that way you guys can plan out your polls and things like that. Now before we move forward, as always, I want to give a big thanks to Rem and the Dissidia DB for all of the lovely information found on the Dissidia DB website, as well as to Macnull and the Dissidia Info, another fantastic resource for Opera Omnia, as well as to the Opera Omnia tracker, giving us a way to track our progress in Dissidia Opera Omnia, as well as to the Tonberry Troop for the amount of time that they take to create those infographics to summarize what these characters can do, and also to the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles podcast, giving us a weekly podcast for us Dissidia Opera Omnia enthusiasts, and last but not least, all of the other DFFOO content creators and streamers, just keeping this community together and growing it and helping each other out. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Emperor's LD weapon. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and talk about Emperor's LD weapon, as well as kind of how his rotation is going to look like with the introduction of his LD weapon, and also the banner and also future banners that his weapons will be repeating on. Now, I did do a few adjustments to my Emperor here on JP Opera Omnia, because one, the burst weapon that he has on JP is something that we're not going to be seeing right away yet on Global, and also Emperor does get a minor rework. However, that won't be really affecting the gameplay that I'm going to be showing on this video. I did also remove his LD extension board, because that is something that we're not going to be seeing until later for this character, but I do have his LD ability equipped. As you can see, it's right over there. So what his LD weapon does is he delivers a powerful 8-hit non-elemental magic brave plus HP attack. It has a really nice overflow. It also deals HP splash damage, and the biggest thing that this does is it gives him a 12-turn unique buff that increases his attack. It also gives him more initial brave, it gives him more brave overflow, and it gives him an a brave regen, excuse me. So it gives him a brave regen. Now this is very good because it allows him to be a little bit more self-sustaining, and as well as being able to deal more damage and hit those higher overflow marks. Now the biggest value about using his LD weapon is that once you use it, having that 12-turn unique buff also gives him access to his HP attack +++ and his brave attack +++. And one of the things about Emperor that was a big issue back then when he first came out is, despite how strong he was, his longevity was very questionable, and his HP attack ++ wasn't that spectacular. I mean, if we take a look at it right here, right? It's just a one-hit, non-elemental magic brave attack. I mean, it's not anything crazy like that. So unfortunately, his longevity was a bit questionable for some of the longer fights, especially as we started to see more Dimensions End and different chaos fights and things like that. So that was one of the biggest issues with this character. But having the LD weapon, available to him definitely fixes this, because as we can see right here, we're gonna go ahead and use that LD, and what the LD does is that all of the traps that Emperor inflicts with his skills and his EX, they will automatically trigger even if they are not present on that enemy target. So that is very powerful, especially because we know that one of his traps, which is the Dreary Cell, actually has the delay effect too. It delays by 1 turn, so it gives you, another turn to set up, deal more damage with Emperor. And as you can see right here, Emperor gains access to his HP attack +++, as well as his Brave attack +++. These deal more hits, they deal more damage, and something that they do is if you have any of his traps present, they will trigger before he actually deals the Brave hits with those. So that's also something cool that this character gets. So he gets more longevity, he gets more damage, and overall just becomes a better, solid magic DPS character that focuses on those trap debuffs that will trigger after they expire, dealing even more damage to the enemy target. Now you're probably wondering, okay, well, what's his rotation? So you have his LD, it auto triggers his traps even if they're not present. What's his rotation? What's that gonna look like? Well, it really depends on the fight. So let's say you're doing, I don't know, a chaos stage, right? And let's say there's like 3 to 5 waves, and we know that at least 1 or 2 of those waves is going to be trash mobs. If they're trash mobs, you probably don't want to pop that LD right away. You may want to consider just going into his HP attack ++, provided that you have him built. You could go into his skill 2 because it is AoE, but assuming that you're going to be running him with other party members, you may just want to save his skills altogether just to really prolong his longevity for the actual boss fight. So as tempting as it is to go right into the LD on a trash wave, I honestly wouldn't. Even though that buff does help him out, I would just save that for the actual boss fight. Now, if there's a middle boss within the waves that you are going to be going up against and you're going to be taking Emperor, then maybe you might want to go into that LD because at least he's going to have the increased stats from the buff that he gets from the LD. And on top of that, you're going to have access to the HP attack +++, as well as to the Brave attack +++. So you could consider using it for the mid-boss fight, but if there's only going to be like trash waves and then the boss, then just save it for the boss fight. So that's honestly how I would go about it. Emperor, all in all, is a very, very straightforward character. Really nothing special that you have to worry about as far as like, oh, what do I do when I do this or when I do that? He's pretty straightforward. One of his biggest weaknesses still is that if you come across one of those rare fights that are either magic resistant or debuff immune to all debuffs, that's where it could really hurt this character. Now, if they are resistant to magic, you could always take a Imperil Enchanter because there you go. It fixes the problem of him being able to deal, resisted damage. But if they are immune to debuffs, that's probably a stage where you don't want to take Emperor because, you won't be able to inflict his traps, and that's what makes this character really, really strong. But overall, he is a very, very solid magic DPS unit. The LD definitely improves his issues as far as being his longevity, giving him access to a very powerful buff, as well as HP attack +++, and as well as his Brave attack +++. Now, as far as the banner that's going to be appearing, which is going to be featuring the debut of this weapon, it's going to have all of Emperor's gear. So if you love Emperor or you're lacking magic DPS and you want to pick up his gear, the rest of his gear is going to be on there. It's also going to have Kefka's Burst weapon. So for those of you that were waiting to pull for Kefka's Burst and you already have his LD and you want to get Emperor's LD weapon on the way, this could be the banner for you. Now, the banner mates that are going to be featured on this, the first one is going to be Furion, who's still a fairly solid character. He deals damage, he also heals you, and any excess heal is going to be converted to Brave, which is kind of cool. So he has that, niche of being like a hybrid DPS healer type of a character that also gives Brave based on the amount of HP he does, excessively heal on your party members. And then afterwards, we have Gilgamesh, who, while he's not nearly as much of a meme as he used to be, he's a little bit more useful now. He definitely has some pretty good longevity. He's probably the more, I would say, lackluster of the bunch featured on this banner, but he's still okay. He has gravity, he has different Brave and HP commands, which can come in handy, especially for longer boss fights, so he does have that going for him. Now, if you're planning to get Emperor's Burst weapon later down the line, because he does get a burst weapon and it is going to be featured on the Divine Ramu, trial or event that's going to be coming out, which is above the Ultimate Trials. What I would personally do, if you were to ask me, hey 40, if you were to pull for Emperor, what would you do? This is what I would do. Even though this banner is slightly on the lackluster side compared to what we're going to be seeing later, if you pull for Emperor's LD on the Lost Chapters banner, it's gonna save you resources for trying to chase the LD when his burst comes out, because when his burst comes out, there's going to be 2 banners that's going to be appearing. It's going to have his burst weapon and his LD weapon coming back, and then afterwards the other banner is going to have Celeste's LD weapon featured, and as well as his burst weapon. So if you're planning on pulling for Celeste's LD weapon, I would highly suggest maybe pulling for at least the LD weapon on his Lost Chapters banner. That way you don't have to worry about dumping too many resources on 2 different banners, because it can get really overwhelming. Despite how generous this game is, there is that factor of RNG, so you just want to keep that in mind. Now, he is going to get his burst weapon later on featured on 2 other banners after that. He's also going to have it on the seasonal banner that features Aerith's LD weapon, and then he's also going to have his burst weapons repeated as well on the Eldnar Lost Chapter banner, and as well as the Aranea event banner, the actual Aranea event as she was intended to be released. So those are going to be the banners where you're going to see Emperor's burst weapon. As far as his LD weapon, it's going to come out here on the Lost Chapters, and then it's going to be coming out later on when he gets his burst weapon. And he also does get his LD extension boards, as well as that minor rework, and he also gets his burst weapon. So, plan accordingly when it comes to your pulls for this character. He's pretty powerful, but if you don't necessarily need somebody like him right now, you can safely pass for some of the other banners that I know you guys are looking forward to, such as like Kuja, or perhaps Warrior of Light, who's getting his LD and burst next, or even somebody like Lightning. There's a lot of cool characters coming out, so if you safely pass on Emperor now, his gear does come back, but it is semi-highly suggested, at least if you're going to be gunning for his burst later, to at least try for the LD weapon now. Alright guys, so hopefully this video helps you guys out in preparing for the Emperor Lost Chapters, in particular, what his LD weapon does and how to use him and all the good sorts of stuff like that. Alright guys, thank you again for watching. This is 40 the Broadway Saiyan signing out. Mahal guys.